Hey guys, it's Vampire Mike from Sega CD Universe. So I wanted to do a quick video talking about something I'm seeing more and more pop up lately. I'm a big fan of the website Slick Deals, and what Slick Deals is, it's people can post deals they find online, and people will make comments or give a thumbs up if they like something or give a thumbs down if they don't. I've noticed lately more and more people are talking about 4K televisions. My soon-to-be father-in-law got one last year that's curved, really nice TV. My buddy Brian just got a 4K TV a couple weeks ago. A couple more people I can think of off the top of my head. So anyway, I've been looking at them, at least the lower-end models, the interesting stuff that I'm finding out, and I just wanted to share some of it with you. So from what I've gathered, I'm probably not the best person to buy a 4K TV just yet. The reason for that is none of the things I have actually support it. I do know 4K televisions will upconvert older signals such as 420, is it 420? 480? 480? 720 and 1080, and they will just upconvert them a bit to make them look a little bit better. Obviously, the higher the content you're working with, the better off something's going to look. I've kind of decided at this point a few things. I don't want to upgrade my Blu-ray collection again. In the past few years, went from DVDs to Blu-rays, bought all the films I liked on Blu-ray, sold some DVDs off, upgraded, etc. I think they look great. I know they look better in 4K, but I'm not spending more money on upgrading my home media. I'm just not. I'm not interested. The other thing is, in terms of media being 4K, Amazon and Netflix have some limited options, probably a dozen or so things that are 4K. That doesn't really interest me a great deal. The other thing is the PlayStation Pro, the PlayStation 4 Pro, does upconvert some games to 4K. The Xbox One Scorpio that's coming out does upconvert certain things to 4K, certain games to 4K. And again, this isn't native 4K. I think everyone was under the impression the Scorpio was going to do native 4K, and from the articles I've been reading, it's not. It's just going to upconvert just the way the PlayStation 4 Pro does. So it's a false 4K. It's nice and it looks good, but it's not a native 4K, which is why I feel they should have stuck with 1080p 60 frames a second. They should have figured out how to stabilize what's already there and what most people have in their living room. But that's neither here nor there. So those are the reasons I don't really see myself getting a 4K TV as of late. Another thing is, there's this great website called RTINGS. I would assume it stands for ratings. And it pretty much reviews almost all of the 4K televisions. There are a lot of 1080 sets on there as well. And some of the lower-end TVs are getting really cheap. And they also are decent. Things like the TCL with the Roku built in, I'm hearing good things. Horrible with motion. Not so great with input lag. So there's a lot of things you have to kind of take into account when you buy a 4K television. And I just wanted to go over some of the ones that I'm noticing in the lower end models that I'm viewing that would be in my budget. So the first thing I would like eventually, when I do go to 4K in the next couple of years, I would guess, is I have a 55-inch TV currently. I'd probably like to go 65, maybe even 70-inch. The reason for that is I sit about 10 and a half feet away from my television, and they say the further you sit away from the TV, obviously the less graphic fidelity you will notice. So, for me to notice something pretty apparent on a 4K television, supposedly I would need about an 80 or 90-inch TV. I don't see myself spending that much money or getting something that large, nor do I have the space to do so. So if I went 65, 70 inches, hopefully I would notice it enough to where it's worth it. Another thing is HDR. Some of the 4K panels come with 8-bit HDR, which do not have the full wide color gamut that 10-bit does. When things say they're HDR, you want to go for 10-bit. 10-bit is the sort of standard, and if you go 8-bit, you're not going to have that gamut of color and that gradation, that scale that you have with 10, and you're sort of not fully upgrading to what 4K is supposed to bring. So there's that. The other thing is the refresh rate. Lots of TVs are 4K TVs with 60 hertz refresh rate. Obviously, the higher the hertz, the better. Some TVs are 120 hertz with 1080, but 60 hertz with 4K. That's pretty nice. That's really nice, actually, because I don't think 4K has 120 hertz yet. However, some of them have, true motion and auto motion and all these settings you can turn on that sort of falsely upconvert the refresh rate. My TV does this. My Samsung is an older Samsung. It's a 1080 set. It's said it was 120. It's not 120. It's actually 60. But when you put the Auto Motion Plus on, it then gives you a fake version of 120. It looks great. I love it. But you have to make sure you're buying a native refresh rate TV for the most part, unless you don't care about that stuff. You can't turn on all these little bells and whistles when you play games. So if you have a 60 hertz TV and you're putting Auto Motion or True Motion Plus on, and you're getting this fake 120 hertz, it's putting in extra clips or extra pieces when you're watching something in motion or when you're watching a show or whatever. And you can't use that for gaming because it will make the input lag on the game intolerable. The game will run like crap. And if you go to push a button, you probably won't see the action take place for, I don't know, a second, let's say, for instance. If you're into computer gaming, 1 to 4 milliseconds is sort of the average. If you're into video games on consoles, they say anything under like 20 or 30 milliseconds is normal and pretty good. So when you start doing like little bells and whistles to your TV, turning on random settings, things that make it look better, etc., the games are going to run worse in terms of the input lag. So not only do you have to take into account the 8-bit and 10-bit HDR panels, you then have to take in whether the input lag is there, how great the input lag is, or bad it is, I should say. If you have a low-end TV, for the most part, the input lag on those are usually pretty bad. Samsung usually has pretty decent input lag. I know Vizio, some of those models are pretty good. LG, but it really depends. If you start going low-end on those models, you're kind of up against probably bad input lag. The other thing is the inputs. My TV has a VGA input, so I can hook my Dreamcast up. It has component and composite. It has 4 HDMI ports. It has an optical port for when I want to use my soundbar. It has something else, a USB port, and I think something else even that's escaping me. But a lot of newer TVs, especially ones that are low-end, lack ports. So most new TVs, or I would say all new TVs, don't even have a VGA port, period. So I'd have to get a converter for my Dreamcast. So that's kind of a pain in the ass. There's a lot of stuff like that. There's a lot of things that they're taking away, a lot of things that they're not putting in the lower-end models where you're spending $600-800 and you think you're getting a great deal, and you're getting a good deal usually, but it might not be fully HDR. It might only be 60 hertz. The input lag might be terrible. The motion might be terrible on it. So I guess what I'm saying is I won't be buying a 4K TV anytime soon, especially because of the distance that I'm sitting from my television, and nothing I have supports it. My Xbox One doesn't support it. My Wii U obviously doesn't support it. My Blu-rays don't support it. If I get a Scorpio, it's not native 4K, so I get it'll look a little better, but I don't think it's going to look like night and day. And if I ever get a Switch, the Switch tops out at 1080. So we're at that point where waiting, let's say a year, would probably be a good idea in my opinion, because the more high-end stuff is going to get cheaper in a year, just like with video game consoles, and you'll be able to get something that does meet all the requirements, has a 10-bit panel, has 120 hertz in certain categories. The input lag is really good. It has the ports you're looking for. Maybe the screen's bigger for a low-end price now. It's sort of still in its infancy. And if you adopt that now, you will most likely not be getting everything you need, or you will be bullshitted. Another thing, and LG does this, just to end the video on this note, LG, I found out, does a fake 4K with their low-end TVs. I don't know if they're still doing this, but they are doing it with some of the ones that are on sale now at Best Buy. There's a 65-inch LG 4K HDR, this, that, and the other thing. You know, apps built in, smart TV. It looks like a nice TV. I looked it up. $700. Great price for that size and what it supposedly can do. However, LG is the only one who does this, I found out. They do something where, instead of taking the color gamut of red, green, blue, the way all TVs do, and then multiplying it or whatever to make it 4K, they add white. So it's actually RGBW. And that white is a fake, like, multiplier. It's not a real color. The way it repeats, red, green, blue, red, green, blue. It's going red, green, blue, white. So it's adding that as some sort of a filler from what I'm reading, and puts out a fake 4K. It's not actually native. It's got this, like, boost to it with the white in there that makes people think it's 4K, and they're labeling it 4K, which seems very fake, because they're not giving you something better, they're giving you something worse and labeling it as 4K. So whatever you do, whether you are an early adopter, you're getting one now, you're waiting a year like I'm probably going to do, or whatever, take into account what you have, take into account what you don't have, what you need, and then all the properties of the TV and what it can do and can't do. Do you want a smart TV? Do you not want a smart TV? As I said, with all the other information, and go from there. Do your homework. That's the best thing I could tell you, because from doing my homework and realizing I probably don't need it just yet, I've really found out an abundance of information that is pretty interesting. So keep an eye on slick deals for your hunts and your 4K television sets. And thanks, guys, for watching. It's Vampire Mike from Sega CD Universe. Be good.